Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to HR Professionals webinar on team development, reboarding hybrid work with hybrid lives with Renee Charney, Senior Consultant with the Leadership Development Group, sponsors of the program. I'm Amy Reamer, Director of Communications with the Leadership Development Group, and just a few quick notes before we get started. Please note that all attendees are on listen-only mode and automatically on mute for the duration of the webinar. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to submit your queries via the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will present them to Renee at the end of the call. Additionally, please note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will provide a link to the recording in the coming days. Now I'd like to turn this over to Cynthia Thompson, editor and publisher for HR Professionals magazine, for a brief introduction.
Hello, everyone. We're so glad to have you with us this holiday season. It's great to be online and joining you this afternoon. We are excited to let you know that today's presentation is already pre-approved for 1 HRCI business credit and 1 SHRM PDC. However, in order to receive that credit, you have to stay online the full 60 minutes. This is a requirement by both SHRM and HRCI. You will receive your credits and the recording in about 5 business days, perhaps sooner, but give us at least 5 business days before you start emailing us. And we will also be sending you a survey, and we would appreciate your input and your feedback, suggestions on future topics and what you liked about today's presentation. We always love your input. I want to let you know that we will have one more webinar this month, December 29th at 2 p.m. Central. Sponsored by DataFacts, and I'll be presenting HR Technology Management for HR Professionals. So please mark your calendars. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Tracy Duberman, who is founder and president of the Leadership Development Team, our sponsors today. Tracy is the founder and president of the Leadership Development Group, and it's a global talent development firm with over 400 in faculty. The TLD Group offers a variety of talent development solutions, including executive coaching, team development, succession planning, and group leadership academies. Duberman is a published author and recognized expert on leadership. In the book, she co-authored From Competition to Collaboration: How Leaders Cultivate Cross-Sector Partnerships to Deliver Value and Transform Health. Duberman and co-author Bob Sachs examine the challenges and opportunities of cross-sector collaborations to enhance consumer and organizational outcomes. Before founding the TLD Group, Duberman was a practice leader at the Hay Group, now part of Korn Ferry. Earlier in her career, Duberman held executive positions in a variety of leading organizations, including Oxford Health Plans, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Tracy earned her PhD from New York University, her MPH from the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and BA from the University of Rochester. She serves on the board of Physician Coaching Institute and is a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives and Harvard McLean's Institute of Coaching. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. Good to see you, Tracy. Tracy, you're on mute.
Well, there you go. A challenge of working in our hybrid work environment that I'm sure we'll be discussing today with Renee. Thank you, Cynthia, very much for the lovely introduction. And to everybody that's here today, I'm delighted to welcome you to the session. Before I introduce our wonderful speaker today, Renee Charney, I wanted to take a quick moment to introduce the Leadership Development Group. I have the distinct honor and privilege of leading the firm. We are deeply committed to developing leaders and their teams to execute strategy. We offer, as Cynthia mentioned, we offer a variety of talent development solutions, ranging from executive coaching to team development to succession planning and customized leadership academies. And we have a global team that's comprised of management psychologists, certified executive coaches, academics, and tenured consultants who have expertise in coaching and consulting to leaders and teams across diverse businesses, one of which is today's presenter, Renee Charney. Given who we are and what we do, we trust you'll find this session both thought-provoking and practically applicable to the work you do to support you and provide the support that you do to leaders and teams within your own organizations. Next slide, please, Renee. So now on to the headliner. TLD Group's Renee Charney is an executive coach, advisor, and consultant who partners with executives and leaders from mid-level to C-level to help them become aware and overcome barriers that stand in the way of realizing their best selves. According to Renee, quote unquote, by helping leaders shift from fixed to growth mindsets, behaviors, then shift awareness, results are achieved and new ways of being become accessible. Renee's experience spans multiple industries, and in particular, she enjoys working with teams, building new teams, and coaching teams, which during the pandemic has shifted from traditional on-site work to a hybrid model and all of the challenges that are associated with that. So you're in for a treat this afternoon as Renee explores how teams can reimagine and re-engage in ways that quell feelings of uncertainty and disconnection. She'll help us to understand new ways of building trust, communicating, and connecting in our new hybrid work model. Renee, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining today. An exciting topic indeed. To get us started, what I'd love for us to do is I have two questions. And this first question, if you could just access the question pane or chat, the first question I'd like to pose to you is, what is one word? So think about a bumper sticker, just one word, that would best describe the most challenging facet of navigating or managing working from home or hybrid work in your experience. And I'll just give you a moment to think about that and enter in one word. We should have Jeopardy music going on, right? All right. And the second question, I told you it's going to be just 1 minute because I wanted one word. Name one thing. So again, in chat or the question pane, name one thing, behavior, action that has helped you navigate or manage working from home or hybrid work challenges. So what has been a helpful thing or behavior or action? Great. So just keep those in mind, a couple of those words, as we go through the slides and as we go through the information. And let's take a look about today's objectives, what we hope to touch on and learn about. There's a human side of change and transition, and it relates to reboarding or hybrid work. So when we think about change, we also think about the transition that humans go through. So we'll touch on that. Also, learning about the leader skills and the mindsets. Tracy had mentioned growth and fixed mindsets. What would help navigate that shift with courage, confidence, and clarity? And then also the team's capacity for adapting and how HR and leaders can clear the way for that adapting. Okay. So the ideal definition of hybrid work, I bet we all have an ideal definition based on our own experience. And so I'm just offering up a couple here. What we think about in hybrid work, what we like to think about that we'd like to keep, or what we hear, is that collaboration, the socialization, the consistency of work and interaction. And what we also hear is discarding what we don't necessarily think is ideal, those fixed hours tied to a desk, limited autonomy. So all of those things that might hamper our work when we're in a on-site work also hampers that hybrid work. So keeping that in mind. And certainly not all roles. So if we think about how employees define hybrid or flexible work, not all roles may accommodate a hybrid work model, but many do. And all companies have some roles where it can and does happen. So first, we would define what hybrid work is, and the best way to do that is to see what employees themselves think it is. So they're, after all, the folks who will see and work through the changes and the transitions. Now, this is a 2019 study, so these numbers may have very well shifted with the last couple of years of the pandemic. And this is a survey from IWG Workplace, and it shows the top 4 ways that employees define hybrid or flexible work. So it's important to emphasize again that this is a 2019 study, pre-pandemic. Numbers could have shifted, but notice particularly the last one, which isn't about location, it's about responsibility, and it's an interesting factor to keep in mind. Employee preferences of where hybrid work is an option is also an important facet to take a look at. And time spent over the pandemic in work from home illuminated that reality that life occurs explicitly as work is occurring. Now, we can all likely look back at the beginning of the pandemic when that funny video, what we thought was funny at the time, that went viral, that video of the worker engaging in a video call and his toddler entered his home office. And shock, and there was laughter and awe, how cute. And then it became for many a daily occurrence. Dogs, cats, children. I had construction happening outside my window. So it brought questions to bear of newfound focus, a seeking for new meaning in daily work and where in life, and an expectation or a need for understanding and acceptance of work and life and where or when each might reside. So for American workers surveyed who can work remotely, there's some interesting data. 74% would prefer to spend at least one day in an office environment post-COVID-19, when that happens. And with 30% looking to work from a space outside the home 2 or 3 days per week. Now, the hybrid work model is most popular among workers between the ages of 18 and 34, according to the data, with more than doubling want to work in a hybrid way compared to those aged 55 and older. And this could be an indication that different generations have different approaches to work. And it also might suggest that over 55s are more likely to lack some of the digital skills that are needed routinely for working remotely, but just some things to keep in mind as you know your audience, to know your audience, right? So think about the generational differences or diversities. So employee preference isn't always about comfort. While research supports a preference for hybrid work among employees, it is understandable that this shift may be uncomfortable for many organizations. This is because organizations are caught up in a liminal space where the long-term effects of post-pandemic hybrid work arrangements are not yet known, says Dr. Lebene Soga of Henley Business School in South Africa. And a liminal space is that junction where an organization is kind of betwixt and between, right? Making a move towards a desired future, but facing enormous uncertainties about crossing that threshold. What will it bring? And it's also in this liminal space, though. The good news is that business transformation can quickly occur, especially when the organization gives way for that flow, right? That obvious flow of current that's happening. And if there's time to listen to employees, it's during this time. It's during that betwixt and between time as it relates to what the hybrid work brings. So bringing them into that conversation, understanding. So let's touch on that just a moment, that distinction between change and transition. There are changes happening and the employees going through this transition. So according, you might be familiar with William Bridges' work. According to William Bridges, who wrote the seminal book, Managing Transitions, change is an event. It's the event. It starts with an outcome and it has an end goal. For instance, we once worked full-time within an office or a facility, and now we work from home. We managed that change with an outcome in mind, continued productivity within a different space or place. But it's the transition, which is the mental and the emotional process of letting go of something that's familiar and then making an attachment to something that's new. So although we might work from home, that change has happened, right? That's the change. We still might have an idea or a question and suddenly realize that we can't pop up and walk down the hall and knock on someone's door to ask that question, or we must adapt to setting up a time to ask a question on a Zoom meeting or on a webinar. We might yearn for those water cooler conversations that we had, or when we stood in line in the cafeteria and were able to bounce some ideas. So we sense a loss. And we sometimes have difficulty adapting or elegantly managing the impermanence of our new reality. So although physically something has changed, the brain and the emotions sometimes lag and are not yet fully present in the new reality. Now that this has occurred over the last couple of years, it's occurring again as organizations are seeking to reboard, right? Back to the office in a hybrid manner. It's a change, yes, and it will be another transition. So all of that transition is below the surface of the water, inside the head and the heart. And that's, you know, here, a story that I have is a client that I worked with over these past 2 years during the pandemic. This concept between change and transition became a vital distinction for deepening the understanding of where people were regarding their emotions and what they felt about their work, their resiliency, working from home. And the leaders within this organization needed to change the way they led, the way they included team members in decision making, and how they coached for performance. Collaboration and intimacy, a big word during these last 2 years. Intimacy became an even more important way of touching base with each other and collaborating. Frequent, quick, routine check-ins versus those long, time-intensive meetings. So trust deepened as leaders and team members worked together to create those solutions during that transition. So keeping this in mind, let's touch on 5 factors for reboarding success. We're going to go through each one: leadership and communication, looking at values, norms, behaviors, and rituals, very important, people-focused, people-centered focus and experience, team alignment, structure and empowerment, performance and accountability. Now we look at this list and sometimes we think, well, or we can think, well, that this is mom and apple pie. Yes, and it's also even more important to look at and to focus on during this time. So leadership and communication. Jake Wood, the founder of Groundswell, shared in a recent New York Times interview. And this is what he said: empathy is core to leading with love. Understanding your people and having compassion for who they are, what they've experienced, what about their life has brought them to that moment in time when they're following you and putting their livelihood in your hands. You're not just treating them as a tool to be used as a means to an end, but truly investing in their future, even if it's not with your organization. So leadership touching in that intimate way with people. The factors shown here contribute to our leaders' capacity to grow and deepen how they lead, how they communicate in new ways while working with employees, navigating that hybrid work world and reboarding into often alternate ways of working on their teams. Conversations that are more coaching versus directing. Knowing individuals, their preferences, showing empathy for how they lean into their work, listening first, responding second or after, enabling agency for decision making and building trust with every interaction. So notice number 5. As I mentioned a few minutes ago about the client that shifted the way they led, one aspect of that shift was to adopt a new way of practicing leadership and building trust or trustworthiness. This equation that you see in number 5 comes from a book, The Trusted Advisor. And in it, the authors espouse 2 factors important in building trust. Credibility, absolutely, you have to have the stuff, right? The skills, the technical expertise. Reliability, are you pulling through on what you promise, right? Are you showing up? And there's that word, intimacy. a factor that is sometimes overlooked in organization. And the dividing line indicates what orientation you're taking as a leader when you are bringing people into the conversation or collaboration. Are you interested in your own focus and idea, or more interested in learning what others think? So once my client made that shift and sharpened their orientation on others rather than self, their trust factors went up, and working through new ways of working went much smoother. All right, number 2, values, norms, behaviors, and rituals. Another factor that's important as you reboard is to readdress, revise, and realign organizational and team values, norms, behaviors, and rituals. How we did things or how we do things around here has likely changed, right? And engaging in collective input to the changes that will work best is important. Commit to celebrating those successes together, whether virtually or in person, and shift that culture towards a growth versus a fixed mindset. This last point is especially important for leaders to embrace both in learning, modeling, and supporting. So let's talk about that. Here's that distinction. So many times we can get fixed or attached to the way things were or the way things are or how they should be, right? And it could get in the way of our capacity to unlearn old ways and learn new ways of being and working together. Carol Dweck illustrates this concept by describing the distinction between growth mindset and fixed mindset. She developed this idea working with elementary school children in her book that was published in 2006 with that study, where she experimented with language and situations that allowed for making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. She developed the concept of not yet rather than not now. When children hadn't quite achieved a certain level of competency, that the not yet was a response or an opening meant that there was space for more learning and growth, whereas not now diminished the child's confidence in trying anything new. It's this concept that also aligns well with adults and with our workers and our employees, with everyone. We often are either rewarded or penalized, but what we can or can't do. So when leading a team through change, like reboarding, into a hybrid way of working, we as leaders have the responsibility to allow for and encourage and emphasize the varying stages that our team members are experiencing about that change. Getting curious, asking open questions about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, their thoughts about what might be possible, how they might contribute to the success of the change, what they might wish to learn through the process, how they might see themselves in the new change, and more. Increasing opportunities for clarity and sharing what you know and what you don't yet know are important. So identifying times when growth mindset language, support, and learning can occur is a significant opportunity for leaders to both support and to model growth mindsets. And this is where courageous leadership steps in, right? For both support and to model growth mindsets. It's a way to allow for space for sometimes difficult and challenging and supportive conversations during a change that might be feeling uncertain or sometimes frightening. Number 3, people-centered, focus and experience. Focusing on people. We've been talking about that for the last few minutes, right? And keeping people centered regarding all decisions and actions is key. So as much as you can, keeping everyone in the conversation, getting to know who they are, meeting them where they are, their preferences, age differences, how they might play within, and how they prefer to accomplish their work. The balances that they might need, dependent upon for individuals and teams, right? And we've heard that, how the flexibility of home and work life and real life really does start melding. Pushing decision-making down into the teams rather than holding them higher in the or top of the organization is key to growth and encourages independent thinking and working within the team. Number 4, team alignment, structure, and empowerment. Deepening team alignment, structure, and empowerment is also very key in making that transition as elegantly as possible. In as many opportunities, always connect work to the collective organizational goals and the meaning that the work holds. Leaders have that responsibility to move the rocks out of the way, to make sure that employees have the tools necessary to flex and to work effectively, and to also do away with back-to-back virtual meetings, which can stand in the way of productivity. I've heard this time and time again with clients that I've worked with, both individuals and with teams. That is a big roadblock to efficiency and decision-making and morale, right? Those back-to-back Zoom meetings are killers. Model and encourage learning from mistakes and enabling space and capacity to unlearn old habits to make way for new ones. Okay. Performance and accountability. Finally, care for ongoing performance and accountability by creating supporting ways for well-being. One of the clients that I'm currently working with is looking more deeply in how they can incorporate more well-being in the organization. It's a tough one, right? So if you are working from home, how do you make available those well-being type of opportunities? So that's a huge, and I don't have the answer for that, but it's something to be thinking about. Creating clear and actionable plans, keeping employees centered by keeping them informed and involved in creating their work environment and outcomes. And trust is built by routinely asking for their feedback, asking them what's working well. What would be even better if? That is a feedback tool that I have been using as of late with many of my teams and individuals. Very simple, very direct. I call it WWWEBI. What's working well? It can be a very quick conversation. What's working well, or what worked well this week? And what would be even better if? So that way it's a generative conversation. All right, in summary, lead and communicate, very important. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Even if you don't know the answer, saying that you don't have the answers right now is important to keep people in the loop. Caring for those values, norms, behaviors, and rituals, very important. Rituals that might be different than they were when it was face-to-face. Keeping that focus and experience as people focused. So as many conversations as you can have around one-to-one coaching, asking what they think, what others think about how they can create new situations or new ways of working, and focusing on alignment, structure, and empowerment, decision-making at the team level or individual level as best as you can, and maintaining that consistency on performance and accountability. And now for the answer to the opening math question, if everybody had that written down. So while you waited as you came in, and before we get to our Q&A, we will be getting to our Q&A, there were 4 US states that contain only 4, and the word is unique letters, and one of them is Utah, and those are the other 3, Mississippi, Kansas, and Indiana. Okay, questions?
Okay, so Renee, we do have some questions coming in. I'm glad that we have time to respond to them. And I did want to remind folks to use the chat or question box to pose their questions as well. Some of them did come into chat. One thing that people were asking is just for some reflections from you, because we had some great responses from the 2 questions that were asked at the beginning of the presentation on the words about the challenges facing folks as they're working in this new hybrid work environment. So is it okay if I read to you some of those responses and then you can reflect?
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
Yes, yes. I'd love to hear the responses from both questions 1 and 2. And would it be helpful? Well, let's just hear the first one was a word that would describe, and then a behavior or action or what helped. So yes, let's hear those.
That's terrific. Okay, so the word that would describe, let's see, there were quite a few, so let me just pull those up. Balance. Let me just see here. Let's see, results of question 1. Balance, trust, connection, retention, chaos, teamwork, accountability, understanding, empathy, technology.
Great. All very important, all very important. And when you think about that first question that I asked, I'm getting to that just a minute. What is one word that would best describe the most challenging facet, right? The challenging facet of navigating. Certainly balance, absolutely. Balancing what's working and what's not. You know, it's a really hard thing. I mean, it was like a whiplash that happened for us. And it was overnight. It really felt like, well, it was overnight, right? All of a sudden we were working from home. So it was a scramble. It was, you know, how do we balance this new way of working when everybody was in the office and walking down the hall or meeting over lunch or, you know, the cocktail hours on Fridays or whatever. So creating that balance was a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. And I think it's one of the most important words. All of these are important, but certainly in balancing what I said earlier, how work and life really are integrated in ways that we've never, at least in my career, have ever encountered. So asking the employees to you know, create their way of working and how they're going to balance, understanding that, you know, projects still need to get done and how can we get it done. So there were many articles in the last few weeks, gosh, that I saw online or in the New York Times or other journals that talk about this balance is key number 1, I think, in everybody's mind. We are never going to be, in my opinion, we are never going back to the way it was. This is the new normal. So finding ways to be able to reach that balance. Building trust, we talked about that a few minutes ago. I think building trust with individuals and teams is even more important now than ever. And certainly with the clients that I've worked with. Now, and yes, we are in chaos. Accountability, we talked about that, making sure that folks are deeply clear about the accountability and keeping each other accountable. Peer-to-peer, setting up some peer-to-peer accountability partnerships, especially in a remote type of working relationship, so that way it's not always the whole team together, but maybe peer-to-peer, and showing empathy. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the second question that you posed had some interesting responses as well. So you said, name one thing, behavior, action that has helped you navigate or manage work from home or hybrid work challenges. So some of those responses include, flexibility, team meetings, listening to others, video meetings, being really organized, constant communication, connecting with others remotely, self-care, meditation, and grace.
Great word, grace, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely. How can we have more grace with each other during this time? Absolutely. And I love the fact, I love all of these, that someone brought up meditation, because that is something that I know I'm working with a client with currently. You know, how can we provide the means for that? You know, when they are in the office, is it, to have a half-hour yoga class, or is there some room that we can create? So having some place where we can kind of tamp down those emotional moments when we feel like we are in chaos. So great words, great words.
Yeah. So the president and CEO of SHRM Johnny Taylor Jr. recommends only 2 days a week maximum working remote. He does not support full-time remote work for most people. Interesting, this is a SHRM certified webinar. So one question that came in is, do you, Renee, agree? And what, if you agree or disagree, what are some of your comments in regard to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah. So it's not tough for me to say that, no, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's a one size fits all. You know, I truly believe that you have to look at all of the context, right? What is the organization providing? You know, what are the products and services that the organization is providing? So not all is going to, it's not one size fits all. And I truly believe that there are people, myself included, that thrive to have that time, that quiet time to work from home and to be able to reflect and be creative. So I think it's, you know, assessing, you know, what you're delivering and how that works for your shareholders and stakeholders. Who you have on the team, getting to know them and seeing how you can balance. We're going back to that balance, right? And the type of work that the person is doing. So if it is creative work that doesn't need collaboration or doesn't have, you know, a good chunk of it is not collaboration, certainly that can be done at home. So I don't believe it's a one size fits all, no.
Okay. Another question is, can you touch on the elements of building trust? Trust in a hybrid work environment.
Yes, and we did touch on this a few minutes ago, and I think that especially for leadership in an organization, if it's not available now, to definitely turn up the volume on learning how to be a leader as coach. And this is hard. It's hard because a lot of our leaders, myself included, as I went through my career, is, you know, you develop this technical expertise, right? You're great at what you do. You're skilled at what you do. Now you become the leader. So you're this expert who is now blessed to become a leader. And it's really hard to make that transition to let go and let others, right? Because sometimes we want to hold on to our expertise. It's a lot of work. And for leaders to become more coach-like, it does take work. And I believe that that is one element that builds trust. When you have those coaching conversations, open questions, not coming in with the answers, asking others, providing coaching that is situational. So all of the tools that we've heard about in leadership development is really very important in building trust. We talked about earlier about that intimacy, you know, the credibility plus reliability and intimacy. Intimacy is very important. Really getting to know your folks and, you know, listening, really deeply listening. And that's self-orientation. So, you know, it's not about you, it's about, you know, what are others thinking and what do others feel and what are they experiencing, getting to know your people. So those are elements that I think are critically important.
Thank you. One question, how do you balance the notion of consistency in performance and accountability and supporting variability in delegation and decision authority based on people preferences?
Wow. Yeah. That's a big question, huh? How do you balance it?
Yeah.
How do you balance it all? Gosh, I wish this was interactive that I can hear other people's thoughts. Let me give that some thought. I think, you know, I don't know. I just keep on going back to you have to know your people. And, you know, making sure that they have the tools, they have the bandwidth, that they're in the right job, they're in the right role. So this is all part of leader work, right? And holding them accountable by having the conversations. You know, it's really, you know, I think about the metaphor of in the circus where they're spinning plates. It's true. You know, this is all about leader work. You're spinning those plates. One tool that I have used in working with others and teaching leaders how to, you know, deepen their leadership capacity is something called skill and will, right? So as you get to know your people, right, understanding that if they are held up on, you know, not being able to do something or not being accountable, is it a skill question or is it a will question, right? Is it the skill that they need or is it something that's motivational? So again, knowing your people to be able to balance all of those is very important. I'm not sure I really touched on all of that, but that's where I go.
Okay. I have a boss who believes the only way for real collaboration is in person. We are still hybrid, but what are some ways I can help them see that virtual collaboration is working?
Yeah. Well, how do you get to them to see that it's working is see if it's working. And if it's not working, then, you know, incorporate new ways of helping it get it to work. If you are going to stay in a hybrid type of environment, perhaps it's a tool that you don't have. You know, are you using virtual means to the best of your ability? Are you using breakout rooms to the best of your ability? So technology has become very key for us. Now, something might change over time. We don't know. But right now, what we have are the tools that we have, right? We have WebEx, and we have Zoom, and we have Microsoft Meetings, or Microsoft Teams, I should say. So making sure that you are using those tools to the capacity that you can for that collaboration. And holding them accountable, you know, maybe at the end of the week or sometime there are midpoint of collaboration check-ins or something like that. But switching it up, because you have to think about how you held people accountable for collaboration in the workplace, and how are you going to translate that in a hybrid world. So I think technology is key, and communication, and, you know, peer-to-peer, holding each other accountable.
And the what kind of metrics would you suggest to identify whether or not collaboration is successful in hybrid work environments?
Wow. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to think about that.
Well,
so translating so I'm sorry, Tracy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wonder if there's a project that's being completed in a hybrid team. Perhaps it's identifying the metric of success prior to starting the project, and then looking at whether or not those metrics were actually met at the end of the hybrid team process. Difficult to come up with one, but other than you have a project that needs to be completed and there's a metric that you're identifying for that project, regardless of whether it's hybrid or in person, to see whether or not you were able to reach the goal. And maybe there's satisfaction, employee satisfaction, that you can look at as well.
Well, one client that I'm working with, it's interesting, because now I'm thinking, you know, how they can even extend what they're doing. They are holding, and if they were in the facility or in the workplace, they'd be doing this, you know, around the water cooler, but these stand-up meetings, right? And so one thing that, and they're very quick to check in on the project. One thing that they are also talking about, that we just started talking about, is creating success factors about during those meetings. So if a project is moving forward, and it's just like, you know, project management too, taking those elements of project management and have we achieved that? So, red, yellow, green, and those kind of conversations that we've had, when we're in the office can be had in a hybrid type of situation. So making sure that those tools are also available, so that way people and the workers and the employees and the folks that are working on the projects can go in and see what the progress is.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned some statistics early on in the presentation about preferences for hybrid work. Do you have a sense as to whether or not there is an age, any type of quantitative data to support which age group prefers working hybrid, in person versus virtually, or versus some hybrid model? Is it dependent on age, sex, any type of
Yeah. And there's a lot of data out there. I'm sure if you scan for data, you can find data to support just about any any thought. But what I found is that, and I have a son who is an engineer. He's in his mid to late 30s, right? And he's even talked about how he's running teams that he consider, he says, oh, these young folks. I'm thinking to myself, wow. But the younger folks seem to be more comfortable with the hybrid work. Now, having said that, there's also evidence out there, and I have to dig it up because I know I've read it somewhere, where the younger folks that are coming into work, because they're new and they might be missing out on a mentorship, and they might be missing out on being able to sit next to someone during a meeting and to learn and that type of thing. There's kind of like that both sides of the coin of the younger folks that are coming in from college or internships and that type of age group that would benefit for being in the office more often than the more seasoned workers. So there's data on both sides, but I would say that what I saw on the data is the younger folks, the younger generation, if you will, and I did not see it distinguished between genders at all. We're more comfortable with the hybrid work, whereas the more seasoned workers, because they were used to that, that's just how they grew up in their career, are more missing out on the in-office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Having a young adult as well entering the workforce and she has not met most of the folks that she works with yet. Okay, there have been a lot of articles written about companies opening offices and having bumps in the road. How do you keep employees motivated as the rules continue to change with new state and federal rules and new variants on the horizon?
Oh yeah, again, whiplash, right? Yeah. Communication, and getting them involved in creating the solution. That's bottom line. I think that is the most important thing. If it comes to the employees as an edict of what's going to happen and they don't have any agency in how that happens, that is going to be a motivation and a morale killer. I would say that getting the employees as part of the solution and having them help create the solution is key.
Okay. How do you maintain your corporate culture if most of your employees are working remote?
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you've been, if you all have been on this, I've been on the Friday afternoon cocktail hour, Friday afternoon on the Zoom, and it's like we're zoomed out, right? Yeah, that's tough, so I honestly don't know, because we only have the technology that we have. So unless an organization has figured out where, now some organizations are doing a kind of a rolling type of bringing people back into the office. So there might be some people that work Mondays and Wednesdays and some people that work Tuesdays and Thursdays. There aren't a lot of people back at the office. But if it's a full-time hybrid, full-time remote type of work situation, I would just say, again, find out those times that you can have conversations that are completely void of the work product. You know, learn about each other, share photos of the vacation that they were on, that people were on, you know, photos of pets. And I know it sounds hokey sometimes, but really getting to know people on that level.
Yeah, it's very good. I see Cynthia has joined again, so I'm thinking that we're at the end of our time, Cynthia.
That is correct. We're almost there, but I have one more question for Renee, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I am a little concerned, Renee, about women losing ground in the compensation world and going back to the way it used to be, you know, lack of equality between women and men, because most of the people who are working from home are working mothers. And they are, of course, they have concerns about COVID, but we're not getting access to leadership when we're working from home. The people, like you mentioned, who can mentor us, who can help us develop our careers. And it's a concern that we may be taking a step backwards if we're working from home all the time. And that's one reason Johnny Taylor feels strongly about being in the office at least 2 days a week. You need to be seen and heard by management if you want a career. There's a difference in a job and a career, as you know. Some people, especially a lot of working women, are working just for the insurance because their husbands are contractors. They have great jobs, but they don't have insurance, those sorts of things. But I hate to see us go backwards in the compensation world as women because we're working from home.
I would hate to see that as well. And I think that's a very big question, Cynthia, because I think it you know, we're not talking politics on this call, but it concerns not just the work in the organizations, but it really does concern a societal question, right? What is available from our culture, not just in the workplace? But for your question for today, I'm not sure I have the answer for that. I mean, you know, we make choices, and we have to make choices based on the best information that we have and the best availability of support that we have. So there are some organizations that I hear from clients and just friends that are awesome on supporting everyone's career, whether they're working from home or not, and some that are not. So I would say, you know, keep eyes and ears open.
It's something to think about as we move ahead. As you mentioned, no one thinks we're going back to the way it used to be. So there's got to be a plan for career development that's worked into the remote process of working. There has to be.
Yeah, and I think that's a great, you know,
backwards.
Yes, and I'm sure SHRM, you know, I would bet that SHRM and other organizations are really taking a look at that, and having important conversations about that.
Yeah, because we don't want to go back to the days when the men are getting all the promotions because the women are at home taking care of the children and doing their jobs online as well. And we've come too far. We don't want to go back, do we?
No, not at all.
Great presentation, Renee. Thank you so much for all this wonderful information.
And I enjoyed the questions. Thank you.
And we want to remind everyone that you will get the link of the recording so that you can share this presentation with your team, and maybe you want to send it to your home even and watch it off hours. But we will be sending you the credits, the HRCI and SHRM credits, within the next 5 days, along with the recording. And please take the time to complete our survey. We want to get your feedback and give us ideas on the next presentations that you would like to hear. What things are interesting to you? What would you like to learn more about? And we thank Tracy Duberman and her team today for putting together this wonderful event. We know that you worked hard on it. We appreciate all your expertise, really. So everybody mark your calendars, December 29th, and plan on joining us the last Thursday of the month. Any other announcements from anyone?
I would just like to thank Renee very much as well, Cynthia, for a wonderful presentation. ever evolving topic. I think we're in the midst of it. I feel like we're living through historical times, not only with everything that's gone on globally in the world, the pandemic, systemic inequity, just changes in the way in which we work. So much for HR professionals to be paying attention to. It can sometimes feel like you're trying to, like you said, Renee, the faucet is just overwhelming. So I just want to thank you, Renee, and I thank everybody for participating today, and Cynthia for the opportunity.
I hope to see you
You're
again
welcome.
next
It's my
year.
pleasure.
You will.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
Merry
you.
Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.